Hey, welcome to the Mind Hacking Happiness Podcast. We're down to our last 2 weeks of our 45-day Mind Mastery 101. Today we're presenting day 36. So we go 36 through 40, and then next week is 41 through 45, and then you graduate with the basics. But don't worry, we're going to keep going with expanding that information and working from the basis that we're setting here to create additional episodes of our podcast to enrich your understanding, enrich your energy, enrich your practice associated with this mind mastery stuff, because that's what we're here to do, is to help you get your stuff under control. If we move the meter just a little bit on you, we're moving the meter on the globe as far as people being in control of their mind, raising happiness levels over the globe, and the ability to live our life the way we would prefer to live our life rather than to be plagued by the internal turmoil that our mind can create for us at times. So today is day 36. Hope this message finds you well. And so starts day 36 of the 45-day Mind Mastery 101. In the last couple of weeks, we talked about fear and anger and sadness, and we looked into the variations of severity in those emotion groups, and we drilled down into those a little bit, and we started to see a pattern of how, when we looked at those equation of emotion variables, how we would reduce the effect that these emotions have on us. We're not going to do that for every emotion group, okay? It's basically going to be the same. Right? You can go through and look at your self map in relation to every one of the emotions that you can possibly have in an emotion group. We'll talk about additional groups today. And you can reduce those by seeing that emotion, by putting an understanding to the emotion. It's all the same pattern. So we're not going to waste a lot of your time by going through and creating a new week for every emotion group, because you're smarter than that, and I know you're smarter than that, and I know you get the pattern now. I know you understand that stuff, so we're going to kind of jump ahead by speaking about the different emotion groups that we can discuss today, at least the main ones that are very common, and then you can just kind of interpolate or extrapolate how to deal with those based on how we dealt with the other ones. And we're also going to provide the basic definitions of the emotion groups today so that you can understand just, kind of the pattern of how the mind works and what the rule sets are for the various common emotions that we have. And that'll give you a better understanding from an emotions intelligence standpoint, and also from a standpoint of what things are arising in you and what the rule sets are that your mind is using to create these things. So today we're going to talk about what about the other emotions. We talked about fear, anger, and sadness, but what about the other stuff? There are rule sets that basically govern which emotion is going to arise within your mind. What are they? Well, first of all, we discovered in our analysis of fear, anger, and sadness that the equation of emotion does hold true, that it is simply our expectation and our preference as compared to each other. And then an additional rule set, okay, if this, then this, right, decides which emotion group. And then we understand that the power level of the EP and the power level of the perception dictates what level of severity that we have of the emotion in the group, right? So, for instance, let's say my son has a problem with his behavior at school or something like that. Depending on what level of behavior problem that it was will determine my level of annoyance or anger or whatever that might arise or might want to arise, or my level of disappointment that might want to arise based on what he did. Like, he has this red, yellow, and green day kind of a stoplight motif that they get reports on what their behavior was, and most of the times he comes home with a green. A lot of times, not a lot, but sometimes he comes home with a yellow day, which means his behavior was such that he moved from green into yellow. And if you go to red, you go to see the principal. It's only happened once before. But where you get multiple yellows in a day, basically, it was all the same thing. He just manic day, couldn't stop talking. But usually, that's his problem. He can't stop talking to his friends, and he can't stop joking with his friends, and he interrupts the teacher and, tries to make a joke, and yada, yada, yada. He's like this little fun guy in class that, everybody looks to as funny and, that type of thing. Well, he gets a yellow every now and then for that. Well, that doesn't really annoy me, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's a pro-social thing. He's having fun with his friends. He needs a little bit more self-control, so there's a little bit of annoyance there that I'm like, come on, really? But that would be much different, however, if he came home with a yellow or a red because he struck another child, right? That perception level would be different for me and would trigger a different severity of the emotion based on his behavior and based on my perception of his behavior, right? The power level would be different on the P side of the equation of emotion. And so that would create a different emotion in my mind based on that differing power level of perception, right? Well, the same is true for all the other emotion sets that we're going to talk about today. You see happiness there on the right. You see disgust there on the right. We haven't talked about those two. So let's move into that stuff, because basically the same type of rule set applies. Your power level of your EP and your power level of your P are going to determine what severity of emotion that you experience within any group, and then we'll talk about the rules of each group as we move forward. All right, let's cover those really quickly. Happiness. Mind-hacking happiness, and we haven't even talked about happiness yet. Isn't that crazy? Well, here's the simple rule for happiness. Happiness arises when your perception in the equation of emotion matches your expectation or preference. And that's basically it. I mean, the variation levels are contented, pleased, happy, elated, or ecstatic. And the power levels of your EP and your P, when the equation of emotion balance, are going to increase your level of are going to create happiness first, and then they're going to increase your level of happiness based on the power levels that are associated. So if your expectation or preference is that your income or your life money situation be held at status quo or better, and you win the lottery, boom, ecstasy, right? Because your perception is, wow, I'm going to have a lot of money, right? Now, that's something that we need to manage, because there's this thing called hedonic happiness where, again, our nervous system, where you smell that gas and then 10 minutes later you don't smell the gas anymore, our nervous system normalizes. And that's why a lot of lottery winners wind up in depression a year later, because they get really ecstatic that they won the money, and then, you know, it's like, oh, wow, this really balances to a high power level, and I'm really happy about winning this money. But then the nervous system normalizes, and all of a sudden the money doesn't make you happy anymore. And so this stuff here helps us put a meta-awareness on, our long-term happiness, what's called our eudaimonia, our well-being, right? We certainly want to experience these quick bursts of happiness, but at the same time, we want to increase our level of well-being. We want to increase our equilibrium, right? We want to increase our overall equation of emotion of life, where everything's just kind of cool and we're kind of coasting through life without many ups and downs. And that's where true happiness resides, right? Let's talk about disgust for a second. Now, disgust is a really simple emotion. A lot of times we talk about the visceral reaction of disgust. Disgust arises when the mind rejects adding something to self. So, for instance, the first thing that we think about when we're talking about disgust is a rancid pile of food or something that smells real bad, and we get that, like we're going to throw up. Well, that's our body's reaction to saying, don't add that to self, body. Right? Body is part of self. Don't add that to self. Let's not eat that. Let's not, that's a disgust reaction. But at the same token, you have that reaction of, let's say somebody walks up and hands you a KKK pamphlet or says, hey, let's join the KKK. And you're like, you disgust me. Well, that's the mind's reaction to say we don't want to add that idea to self. Same physiological reaction, right? It's simply just an idea rejection that disgusts me. Pedophilia, right? The idea disgusts me, right? We want to reject that idea and not add it to self. That's the basic rule of disgust. And the power levels of the EP and the P, again, will determine what level of disgust that we have. And the perception, typically on something rancid, like something, something we smell or that type of thing, creates a high power perception because it's coming through our senses. And so that's where we're like, I'm going to get sick. So that's the basic rule of disgust. And the power levels are selected by the power level of your EP and your P in the equation of emotion. Worry. Now, worry is a really simple emotion to understand, because worry is simply a fear with an added time component. The definition of worry is that worry is a fear that will resolve or not, because worry is kind of imagined, at some future time. It's not happening now. Worry, layoffs are coming in your job. Oh, well, now I'm worried about my income. I'm not exactly going to know what's coming until, the layoffs are announced and my name's either on the list or not on the list of people who are going to be fired. So I got to worry about it now. Well, it's a fear. A potential devaluation is coming, but the resolution isn't coming until sometime in the future. Now, the really weird thing about worry is that it's an entirely imagined emotion. The only thing that's happening is right here, right now. So you're imagining a scenario in the future that creates the emotion of worry. And so basically it's just a bunch of wasted time. Why worry about stuff? It's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. You can plan for things to happen. If bad things happen, you can plan, like save for a rainy day and stuff like that. We've got dehydrated food downstairs, where if a sun flare comes and knocks out the power grid for 2 or 3 months, we have water outside that we can drink and filter, and we have dehydrated food that we can sustain if the trucks stop rolling to Kroger for infrastructure reasons, whatever it is. We're going to be okay for a while, right? It's not that you don't plan on potential bad events, but at the same time, you don't have to worry about them, especially if you do plan, by the way. But worrying, waste of energy, so don't do it. Regret, simple as well. Regret is simply a sadness with an extra time component. A regret is a sadness that occurred in the past. We have multiple levels of power of sadness, or of regret as well. Reticent, distaste, regret, repulsed, deplore. Grandma died. I regret grandma died. I did something dumb. I regret that I did something dumb, right? It's a sadness that occurred in the past. So we're a little distance from it. It's not happening right now. We're not really sad about it, but we can still regret it. Stress is the last one we're going to talk about today. But stress, and this is an interesting one because it kind of comes across all emotional responses. Stress is the reaction that we have when there is an extended imbalance in the equation of emotion. And this is ironic because even in states of positive emotion where there's a slight imbalance, where the perception isn't, it's like better than your expectation or preference. When you're really happy or ecstatic or that type of thing, there is a stress response in the body, which is counterintuitive, but it does happen. So that kind of gives us scientific support of this is correct and this is how it works. But at any time that we're having a negative emotion, it always causes stress, right? Any instance of fear, stress. Any instance of anger, stress. Any instance of sadness, stress. Any instance of worry, regret, disgust, stress. We're causing stress within the body. Stress increases inflammation. Stress increases cortisol. Bad stuff is happening. So stress is the state of mind that occurs anytime there is an extended imbalance in the EoE. And of course, this is true from a physiological level as well. Like if there's a sickness in your body, well, your body, the EoE, the equation of emotion, is basically just an extended extension of homeostasis. And so the body itself says, look, if everything's cool, everything's cool. If everything's not cool, then we got to make it cool, right? That's what basically homeostasis is. Well, at any point that everything's not cool, something's in imbalance. And so stress within the body fits this definition as well. Now, anytime you have a negative emotion that extends over a longer period of time, you're going to generate stress, which is why it's imperative that we try to keep our equation of emotion balanced at all times. And if we can do that with practice over time, then our stress level comes down. And studies show this. Good anger management courses, good counseling, good anything that reduces an emotional reactivity within the brain. Other disciplines that we haven't talked about previously that haven't been as effective as this new stuff is now, all reduce stress. It comes across the board as a stress reduction therapy anytime that you're dealing with these internal issues. And so when you're dealing with becoming less reactive overall and becoming a master of your mind, your stress level will be 0. And I took a test previously on that measured, heart rate and brain scan and the whole thing. And my stress level, 0, flatline. There was absolutely no stress profile in my existence. Because, I've been practicing this stuff for a while. Over 10,000 hours officially qualifies me as a mind master. Boop. All right. Now, your other emotions, go back to Mind Hacking Happiness, the red book. The quickest way to, what's the subtitle? I can't remember. Anyway, Mind Hacking Happiness, Volume 1. I wrote the book and I can't remember. The quickest way to happiness and controlling your mind. That's what it is. If you want to find it on Amazon, you can pick it up on Amazon. If you want to get it from Audible, go to mindhackinghappiness.com/free book or /Audible. I think it's /free book. And you go there and that'll take you to Audible and get you signed up for their free 30-day trial where you can get the book for free. And just sign up and you'll love them. I've been a member since 2006. And that's one portion of the budget that will never go away because I love those guys. So if you want to talk about the other groups, emotion groups, the less common emotion groups, they're covered in Mind Hacking Happiness Volume 1. And don't forget, our mixed emotions of our equation of emotion also apply to these new groups. So you can be angry and disgusted at the same time. You can be sad and regretful at the same time, right? That's based on multiple equations of emotion. You might have multiple perceptions about one event, and those multiple perceptions, depending on what the rules of the emotion group are, will present as different emotions at different severities and create different situations for you to deal with. But the cool thing is, now that you know how it works, you can look within your mind, take a moment to practice your meta-awareness and say, okay, I'm feeling a little bit sad about this. I'm feeling a little bit frustrated about this. I'm feeling a little bit worried about this. And break those things out and look at them. And looking at them will apply your prefrontal cortex, downregulate your limbic system, get you back under control, get your IQ back online. If your prefrontal cortex is shut down for some reason because your limbic system is firing, it's all good. All good stuff occurs when you start to take control of your mind in this fashion. And of course, all of our different emotions are going to pile up at times, and it's okay to have to deal with those in the heat of the moment, but take a little while when you can, when there's an opportunity, to break that stuff out and look at it. Because when you look at it, you will gain an understanding of it, and it will stop bugging you. Practicing separation from your troubling emotions, again, looking at your mind in its play, separates you from your mind. Separates you from your emotional responses and reminds you, I am not these emotions. I am having these emotions, but I am not these emotions. And thus, I can control the variables that create these things. So let's get these things flushed down the toilet. And this allows you to enjoy life from that point forward. And enjoy, to me, is a verb. You enjoy life. Action verb. Action verb of the mind, enjoy. Homework for today. It's our virtual Monday, so meditate for 15 minutes today. Set an alarm and see if you can't control your focus on your breath or on some other point of focus. Right? Do a body scan or whatever it is that you want to do. The Mind Meditation app, use it, focus on it, see if you can keep focused for 15 minutes. Hope this message finds you well. We'll speak more tomorrow.